Good afternoon, everyone. I promised I was going to start in a workshop, so that I've just built, especially for doing things like this, but I haven't. So this is a nice little pickup that I've picked up today, and as you can see, it's in a box. There's a couple of suspect-looking parts on the top. I've got to have a quick look at these first. So first of all is, any of you will recognise a Technics connector. I think that's maybe a 1210 connector block for wiring up a turntable. But obviously it's never really a good sign when this isn't in the box attached to the turntable. So there's that. There's a quite suspect looking belt here, which is square but absolutely huge. Now I suspect that for a turntable that's maybe not ideal, but we'll have a look at that. And we've got a set of interconnects with an earth cable there that presumably we'll need to chop down and have a look. They're like decent quality interconnects. Maybe we'll use them, we'll have a look, but for now let's have a look what's in the box, because it is a little bit unusual. So I picked this up today from a guy called Steve, who I don't know if he'll ever see this, but Steve had some particularly nice audio equipment kicking about, some reel-to-reels and some other bits and bobs, loads of bits and bobs dotted about his flat. And when I got there a little bit early, and he was actually sat polishing it, which it didn't really need to because it needs completely stripping and cleaning anyway. But this is an Ariston turntable with quite a questionable tone arm, I'll be honest with you. We've got the slip mat in there. I'm going to get the tone arm out first and have a look at that, because it's quite unusual, and then we'll get the turntable out and have a bit of a flick through it and a bit of a chat, and then hopefully we're going to restore it and do everything we can. So this is a tone arm that came with the turntable. It's a little bit of an unusual thing. I would even go so far as to say it looks horrendous. I thought it was homemade, but it turns out to be a Microtrack 303, which is a broadcast tone arm used in, well, broadcasting from a radio station or something like that. I'm not entirely sure what the actual difference is between a broadcast tone arm and a normal tone arm, but it's not my vibe. I'm going to try and update this. This dates from the 70s, I think, and I have no intention of putting this near this turntable once it's complete. So eventually I found somebody who could make a better use of this than me. No doubt it'll go on something that's more fitting to its style and its age, and hopefully they get some use out of it. This has been screwed to the turntable because it does have screw holes for it on the armboard, unfortunately, but we've got a plan for the armboard. I think I'm going to fit a Rega tone arm to this turntable just because I like the design. It should go quite well, but this strange little thing is well out and gone and done, so we'll move on. And there we go. This is an Ariston RD-40, lovingly crafted and created in Scotland. This is sprung mounted. We have got a speed selector on the front here with fine tuning knobs, I presume, on the left and right of it. These springs are very similar to the Lin ones, I believe, and they're adjusted on the top. And let's take this platter off, which is ridiculously heavy actually. When I got there, the guy was filling the platter and basically anything that was rotational with what looked like 3 1/2 from the pound shop. So I really want to get all that off, everything cleaned up, and just see where we can get with it. So let's try and take this off the top, which I believe is kind of a clamp, I suppose. We've got a slip mat which has got also some lovely stains on it. Jive, that's going in the bin, and I'll have to do this two-handed, I think, but it's pretty clean. I think someone's been at it with the auto sol and whatever else, and it's nice and smooth. That's very smooth. Awesome. Let's pull that off. That is extremely heavy for a platter. I'll be honest with you, I'm used to a Technics gear, but that is a heavy platter, and it's drowning in oil as well, but we'll get to that. So inside then, what have we got? We have got a counterweight there, which seems to be the counterweight for when you put the tone arm on that side, so it's not, it seems to be a weight to counteract the weight of the tone arm once it's on over there to balance it out. And this is the DC version, so there's our DC motor there What condition that's in, I don't know, but we'll strip that and clean it as well. Ariston Acoustics, Prestwick, Scotland, and Kilmarnock postcode there. So all our wiring and everything else for the base here looks pretty solid to the motor. These are kind of not known for their you know, amazing speed retention, but hopefully we can do a little bit about that, give that a good clean out and work out what we're doing. There is actually, that is full of oil, like absolutely full of oil. Absolutely full of oil. I don't know how I'm going to get that out of there. We've got some kind of homemade earth cables for the chassis, and then we've got an earth cable there going to the bottom. And the seller did mention something about wanting to put a spring underneath it. He was mentioning that I should use that M6 bolt at the back there to put some form of an earth. I'm not entirely sure why I'd need to do that when we have an earth cable jerry rigged on this side, but I'm quite excited by this, to be honest with you. I've been looking for something a bit unusual as a turntable for a while, but this has got a little bit of cool factor about it. However, it does need a bloody good clean. Upon looking at this, I wonder if this has been painted black in the past. I'm not sure precisely. I've seen them in black, and it'd be nicer maybe to have that middle part in black, but we'll just have to wait and see. Alright, so now it's all unboxed, the first thing I'm going to do is I'd like to completely strip it down, not only for cleaning, but at the same time this part here, this chassis part underneath the platter, should be black. So I'm going to completely strip it down, and then we're going to sand and return this part with the RD-40 written on it. We're going to turn this back to black. So let's start with a strip down. I don't know if you saw there, but the whole thing is swimming in oil, some kind of oil. This is going to be mainly a clean up before we can do much else. But I'm happy with the base and the colour and these supporting pillars. Happy with that. These just unscrew off the sides in the little Allen key ports there. So once that's off now, it means I'm going to have to get rid of all the oil before I can do anything anywhere near painting, because otherwise it won't stick. So let's get the chassis back. All inside here, which is where the platter was sat on, is just full of oil. So whether that's correct or not, it's all got to come out. And I think we're going to mask off these arms, and then I'd like to paint the outside in black. So which will mean this outside bit and all around the outside here. So I'm hoping this is just going to kind of pour out the hole as much as I can, and then I'm going to get in there with some cotton buds and get all the dirt out. Yeah, look at that. Oh yeah, look at that. Exactly what you want. Because this is disgusting. I think what's happened is nobody's cleaned it out, and they've basically just filled it full of more and more and more oil. Oh my god. Look at that. Let's get this this brass counterweights off. Luckily these are just sliding off, but they do have grub screws. I'm going to try and get this nut out now, and I think I'll put it through the ultrasonic and get all the oil and grease and grime out. How that happens, I don't really know. Right, so after some research, unfortunately, it seems like this is pressed in, and what I don't want to do is damage where it's pressed into the alloy, which is, you can kind of see where it's been pressed in underneath. If I damage it, it's going to be off center, it's going to be absolutely destroyed. So the only option I've got is to try and scoosh out what's in there and clean it out as best I can. Let's see what this does. Look at that. Alright, happy with that. Clean. So I've separated where the tonearm base attaches to, simply because the bolts were actually loose. So when this was plating, I'm not entirely sure what the point would be if someone, you know, someone has stripped all this down. This was rattling about all over the place, so imagine what that's going to sound like when you've got a tonearm on it. So I managed to separate that. I've got gloves on now because I've completely degreased, washed, sanded and cleaned all this. So I'll mask it up next, and then we can stick some undercoat on. And I need to go out and buy some decent lacquer, because I thought I had some and I don't. Ta-da! All masked up, ready to go. So I'm going to go paint this now, and hopefully when I come back we can rebuild. There's one layer of undercoat, a nice solid layer. And here we are the next day, painted, sanded, lacquered, exactly as it should have looked when it came out the factory, as fresh as a daisy. I managed to remove the mount, as I said, for the armboard, and I'm glad I did, to be honest with you. It just allowed for a really better finish overall, I think. Really nice paint finish there as well. Took my time with it, sanded it all down, and got it exactly as I wanted. So now it's time to rebuild. So first thing on the rebuilding stage, and it's always nice to work with nice fresh painted stuff in it, let's be honest. So I'm going to try and get this this plate for the armboard. This attaches back onto there, so let's get that on first. I think we've got to try and really be careful that I don't damage any of the paintwork. And hopefully we can get this together without scratching it. Right, so that's on. I'm not going to nip this up until I can mount it back on the base, just so I've got something to kind of lean on, but looks loads better. Really happy with that. There we go. I made sure I used some washers as well, so we're not affecting anything on the inside. It's not getting damaged or anything. And now it's time to just nip all these up. Just go around and just nip everything up, make sure it's tight. The steely-eyed amongst you will notice that the one thing that is missing is an armboard that's going to work with a Rega tonearm. The original one, I have no idea what it was off. It was all mashed up and messed up anyway. So first thing I did, get yourself on the old internet and design and kind of rob a little bit of somebody else's design. This was from just a basic 3D printing website. This is an Ariston Rega armboard, and apparently it all fits and the geometry is correct. So this took about 5 hours to print, and a quick layer of paint and a good coat of lacquer, and should be all ready to go. Look at that. Right now, so it's time to fit our nice new 3D printed and painted Rega armboard, which just sits on there. Very, very nice. And got some nice fresh screws to use. Let's see if I can just spin that round another. No, that's it. That's as tight as we're going to get it. And obviously we've got our Rega arm to fit. I do have some spaces there for the height adjusting. I think one that I don't use I'll probably put underneath to act as a kind of a washer for the arm basically. But it's got a couple of bits left to reattach on the inside of the turntable, and I've got a couple of screws to tighten up, and then I think we're ready to put an arm on. Awesome. I've kept the original tonearm earth terminal sticker just because I thought it was cool, so I'm going to reattach that as well. So a couple of you might notice the weights that we've got here. So these weights are designed to counteract the weight of whatever arm you've got on there, to balance out this part of the turntable. So once we've got our arm on, then we can maybe look at sliding these backwards and forwards and see how it looks, see if we can get to balancing it as best we can. But arm next. So the arm I've chosen is a Rega RB300, and there's a couple of reasons why I chose this. One, it's black. Two, it was the right price. And three, it has integrated lift and everything as part of the arm. So there's nowhere else to put it on the turntable, it has to be part of the arm. Right, I've only gone for one spacer at the moment, it's by eye, so it's just a case of once we get a record on and we can sort out the vertical tracking and the height and everything, we'll just stick that spacer as it is now. But I'm going to put, there is a really tiny one there, in fact I'm going to use this big one because I know I'm not going to use one of that size. That's going to go underneath, and then when I put the locking nut underneath, it's not going to cut into the armboard, it'll be a nice smooth tighten. Alright, finger tight. I've got the nice tungsten weight to go on the back of the arm as well, which is pretty cool. I can attach that. Just loose for now. So we're starting to get somewhere now, and now it's just a case of kind of straightening where I want this arm to sit when it's not in use compared to the front. I'd like to try and get it at 90 degrees to the front, which is not simple actually for essentially a round deck, but I think that's there. Yeah, we'll go with that. So the arm's on fully tightened and square. I've used a set square to try and set it as best as I possibly can, to be honest with you, which isn't particularly easy. So what I'm going to try and do now is try and adjust those brass weights underneath the platter to try and balance it as best as I can, which I don't think is going to be too easy, if I'm honest, but let's give it a go. So I'm going to take this platter off again, and from what I can see, it's really difficult to do because you need the platter on to have the weight to push it off the top of these springs. So it's going to be a case of putting the platter on, off, on, off, on, off, and see how far I can get it. So I'm going to put the weight all the way over to the side and see if that's enough. That actually is a lot better. Looking at the gapping that's ended up between the bottom and the top floating kind of mezzanine deck, I think that is actually a lot better. It feels a bit heavier at the back, but it is sat suspended on the springs there, which is good. So I'm kind of happy with that. I just have to have a bit of a play about with these and see if we can get it to height as best we can. Right, so I've basically just sat here for about 15 minutes and twiddled all of these adjusters with a spirit level on the top, and I believe we are absolutely level all the way around. You adjust one and one other one goes out and everything else. The desk is obviously flat as well, so that's good, but it's irrelevant because you're looking for the flatness of the platter. But that's the best that I think I can get it. So whether it'll knock it out when I put a belt on it, we'll have to wait and see. Right, so I'm going to put a belt on now. I'm going to do the exact same thing I did after I've put the belt on. And then we're going to put some oil into the well for the platter as well. Lots of wells in that statement. I'm going to take the slip mat off. And the belt goes underneath the platter, as you can see. And then you have to fire that onto the motor. Alright, on a winner. Smooth as butter. I'm happy with that. It kind of sits on the oil when you put the right amount of oil in the bottom. And I've basically done it off camera, but I've kind of acted like a dipstick. And when there's about, I think it's 3 mil of oil in the bottom, it sits on the oil. Absolute reduction of friction is unbelievable. Alright, so we're on a bit of a mission. We're belted up. What I've worked out is that I had these feet too high, so when the belt was spinning it was coming off the bottom, so you need about 3 to 4 mil gap in the bottom there. And we're done. I've took the platter mat off and we are centralized, nice and flat. Happy days. So all that's left to do really is plug it in and go in the house, fit a cartridge, and then it's test time. Cartridge is now fitted. This was actually a bit of a mission because I had to generate a protractor for the fact that this deck is a mixture of the Rega tonearm and a different arm board and everything. I did that at alignmentprotractor.com, which will allow you to print this custom alignment gauge out, and using the Stevenson technique you can just put it onto the center there and adjust your cartridge as you see fit. This was a little bit fiddly, if I'm honest with you. The armboard is about 3 mil out, so it meant adjusting the cartridge, but it also means adjusting the motor height, because you see those little screws there on springs, as you can see in the hole. When you end up fitting the platter plus a mat plus a record, it causes the belt to not run central on the motor, which is an absolute nightmare. So you've got to adjust everything. I use these little spirit levels, which are good for cartridges, on the center to make sure the platter's level as well. And then I like to use a cork platter mat, just be personal preference really. I like the look of it, and just a case of just popping that on there. And these are potentially quite good at recovering a little bit of base that you potentially lose. I do use a weight, but there is also a clamp, a record clamp, which is fitted as standard to this turntable, but it can be a bit fiddly, so Paul prefers this one. There's a fair weight to this, so as soon as you put this on, that's more weight, and then you've also got to adjust the platter height again. Speed control, left for 33 and all the way to the right for 45, and centralize for off, and you can fine adjust these using these two little knobs here. RPM speed and wow is a little app you can use on a phone. You can stick this on top of your turntable and turn it on, and I am absolutely amazed by this, but it will give you the speed and allow you to adjust it as you see fit. However, again, you're adding more weight to the turntable, so this is a bit of a happy medium between using this app to set your speed and also using a test record with a strobe gauge on the top of it and using your 50 Hz light. To be honest with you, I was relatively happy with this, and I'll just fine tune it by ear. But really, I just wanted to have a play with this and show you how natty this little app is. And it bamboozles my brain that those numbers stay in one place whilst it's spinning. This is potentially the best bit of the video, so if you got this far then you've probably peaked. But I watched this for a good 20 minutes. So that brings us to a close really. All that's left to do now with this is to just enjoy it and listen to some records. I've really enjoyed this restoration, and I think putting a newer or more modern arm on it than what was on it previously really brings it up. The fact that it's all black and back to factory spec makes me happy as well. This is how I imagined it should be when it's 100% restored. I've been listening to this today and it does sound absolutely amazing. It retains speed absolutely fine. So all that's left to do really is just enjoy it. This brings us to the end of the restoration. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment. Let me know how you get on. Maybe you've got one of these. Tell me if you like it. Alright, have yourself a nice weekend. Bye bye.